your energy bill just went up again. And if you're a young person in the UK right now, renting a flat, living in student accommodation, sharing a house with 4 other people who all leave the heating on, you've probably felt it. That quiet dread when the bill arrives. The mental arithmetic of working out whether you can afford it this month without cutting something else. This isn't in your head. The numbers are real. Energy bills in the UK have reset to a level that a generation of young people simply didn't grow up expecting. The price cap has shifted multiple times in recent years. And while the headlines tend to focus on families and pensioners, and rightly so, the impact on young renters, students, and people just starting out financially has been quietly devastating. But here's the thing. There are specific, actionable ways to cut your energy cost this year. Not vague advice about turning the lights off. Real strategies. Ones that the majority of young people in the UK haven't used yet. And some of them could save you £400 or more over the next 12 months. Let's get into it. First, let's understand what's actually driving these bills. Because if you understand the problem, the solutions make a lot more sense. The UK energy market is controlled by something called the price cap. This is set by the energy regulator Ofgem and updated quarterly. It doesn't cap the total amount you pay, it caps the unit rate and standing charge that suppliers can charge you. So if you use more energy, you pay more. The cap limits the price per unit, not your total bill. Right now, in 2026, the price cap sits at a level that is significantly higher than it was just 4 or 5 years ago. Look at this. The trajectory of average household energy bills in the UK over the last decade is one of the most dramatic cost of living stories of recent years. What used to be a manageable, almost background expense has become one of the most significant items in many household budgets. And for young people specifically, people who are renting rather than owning, people who often have older, less efficient boilers and drafty windows they have no control over, people who are already stretched on income, or the impact hits differently. You can't always control the property, but you can control your behaviour, and in some cases, your tariff. And those two things together add up to real money. Let's start with the tariff, because this is the area where most young renters are leaving the most money on the table, and they don't even know it. Here's the problem. A huge number of people in the UK are sitting on their energy supplier's standard variable tariff. The default. The one you end up on when you move into a new place and don't change anything. And in most cases, the standard variable tariff is not the cheapest option available to you. Fixed rate tariffs, where you lock in a unit rate for a set period, typically 12 or 24 months, have at various points offered genuinely better value than the standard variable rate. Not always. It depends on where the price cap is heading, but the point is, you need to check. Actively. Not once and forget about it. Regularly. The comparison sites, services like Uswitch, Money Supermarket, and the Energy Saving Trust's tools let you input your current usage and see what else is available. This takes about 10 minutes, and for some people, switching to a better tariff saves £100 to £200 per year without changing their behaviour at all. Most people don't realise that switching energy supplier is now genuinely straightforward. The process is handled between suppliers. You don't lose supply during a switch. You don't need to do anything technical. You compare, you apply, it happens. The only thing standing between many people and a cheaper bill is the 10 minutes they haven't spent checking. Now let's talk about the behaviour side, because even on the best tariff available, how you use energy matters enormously. And this is where it gets interesting. Because the biggest savings for young people aren't usually about dramatic lifestyle changes. They're about a handful of specific habits that most people simply haven't thought about. Here's the first one. Heating. In the UK, space heating, keeping your home warm, accounts for the majority of domestic energy use. And the way most people heat their homes is inefficient in ways that are easy to fix. The single most impactful change most renters can make is this: heat the rooms you're actually in, not the entire property. If you're in your bedroom working, you don't need the living room at 21 degrees. A programmable thermostat, or if your landlord won't fit one, a smart plug with a plug-in radiator, lets you control this precisely. Dropping the thermostat by just 1 degree can reduce your heating bill by around 10%. 1 degree. That's not cold. That's barely noticeable. But over a winter, it adds up to a meaningful saving. Here's the second one. And this one surprises people. Standby power. Most people are aware that leaving appliances on standby uses some energy, but they assume it's negligible. Look at this. The average UK household loses around £55 to £80 per year to standby power alone. Televisions, games consoles, phone chargers left plugged in, microwaves with digital clocks, rotors and smart speakers that never actually switch off. Individually, each one is tiny. Collectively, they're a consistent drain. A simple 4-way plug socket with individual switches costs a few pounds, lets you cut the power to multiple devices at once without unplugging everything. In a student house or a shared flat, doing this across the main entertainment area alone saves a noticeable amount over the course of a year. Small, but real. And the kind of thing that compounds when you apply it across multiple areas. The third habit is one that most people get wrong, and it relates to one of the most energy-hungry appliances in any home. The washing machine. Washing at 30 degrees instead of 40 or 60 uses significantly less energy, in many cases around 40% less electricity per cycle. Modern detergents are formulated to work effectively at lower temperatures. The clothes come out just as clean in the vast majority of cases. And if you're running 2 or 3 washes a week, the saving across a year is genuinely noticeable. Combined with waiting for a full load rather than running half-empty cycles, this single appliance alone can save a student or young renter £30 to £50 a year. Which sounds modest. But add that to the thermostat saving, add the standby saving, add the tariff saving, and suddenly you're looking at a cumulative reduction that clears £200 without any single dramatic change. Now, let's talk about something that most young people in the UK have never heard of, and this one could be the biggest saving of all for the right person. The Warm Home Discount. This is a government scheme that provides a one-off reduction on your electricity bill, currently £150 for eligible households. It's applied directly to your bill by your energy supplier. You don't receive cash, but £150 off your bill is £150 off your bill. Eligibility has 2 tracks. The first is automatic. If you receive certain means-tested benefits, you're enrolled without needing to do anything. The second track is broader and supplier dependent. Some energy companies extend the discount to households on lower incomes that meet specific criteria, even if they're not on qualifying benefits. Here's the thing that most students and young workers don't know. If you're living alone or in a small household, earning a low income, and your energy supplier participates in the scheme, you may qualify for the second track. And most people never check, because most people have never heard of it. The scheme runs each year and places are limited. Applications typically open in the autumn. If you've never looked into this, it is worth 5 minutes of your time to check your supplier's website and see whether you're eligible. There are also energy grants available through some local councils and the government's ECO scheme, designed to fund insulation, boiler upgrades, and other efficiency improvements for eligible households. If you're in private rented accommodation, these are harder to access because your landlord has to cooperate. But if you're in social housing, or if your landlord is open to the conversation, it's worth knowing these schemes exist. Let's talk about student accommodation specifically, because if you're in university-managed halls, the energy situation is different, and there are specific angles worth knowing. Most halls of residence include energy in the rent, which means the price cap doesn't directly affect your monthly outgoing in the same way. But it does affect the university's costs, which eventually feeds into rent increases and accommodation charges over time. If you're in private student accommodation, a shared house, a privately managed block, you're far more exposed, and the dynamics of shared bills in student houses create their own specific problems. The most common one is this: nobody takes ownership of the energy account. Bills arrive. Arguments happen about whose name it's in. Nobody switches tariff because nobody feels responsible. And everyone ends up paying more than they should. The solution is simple. Designate one person as the account holder. Use a bill splitting service. There are several specifically designed for student houses in the UKE to divide costs fairly and make one collective decision about tariff and supplier at the start of each tenancy. 20 minutes at the beginning of the year saves months of friction and potentially hundreds of pounds. Here's something broader I want to address, because energy bills don't exist in isolation. In 2026, the cost of living pressure on young people in the UK is coming from multiple directions simultaneously. Rent, food, transport, council tax if you're no longer a full-time student, and energy on top of all of it. And the temptation, the very human temptation, is to feel overwhelmed by all of it, to deal with the most urgent thing and ignore the rest, to put off the tariff check, the benefit eligibility review, the thermostat adjustment, because each one individually feels like it's not worth the effort. But this is exactly the thinking that costs people the most money over time. Look at the numbers. Tariff switch, up to £200 saved. Warm home discount if eligible, £150. Heating and behavioural changes, £100 to £150. Standby and appliance habits, £50 to £80. Washing habits, £30 to £50. Add those up. On the conservative end, you're looking at £400 to £500 over the course of a year, from changes that, in total, require maybe 2 hours of your time spread across an afternoon. That is not a trivial amount of money for someone on a student budget or an entry-level salary. That is a month's worth of groceries. That is 3 months of a mobile phone contract. That is the difference between a savings account that's growing and one that's standing still. The energy crisis that hit the UK in recent years didn't just raise bills. It exposed something that had always been true but rarely discussed, that most people have far more control over their energy costs than they think. And most of them never exercise that control because nobody ever showed them how. You're watching this, which means you're paying attention. Take the 2 hours, check the tariff, look into the warm home discount, make the small habit adjustments, have the conversation in the shared house. £400 saved isn't glamorous. It won't go viral. Nobody will make a documentary about the afternoon you switched to energy supplier and turned the thermostat down 1 degree. But it's real. It's yours. And in a financial environment where every pound matters more than it used to, taking back control of your energy bill is one of the most practical, most immediate financial wins available to you right now. Start today. The savings are already waiting.